Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. This is our Circle Up Time Warp Edition, AEE's conversation discussion series, and we're wrapping it up with people from all different decades. We're going to let everybody come in and hang out for a little bit, but feel free to chat or ask people what's going on or say hi to folks as they come in. I know we're excited about our upcoming conference in November, and yeah, can check out who's going to be there and who's not. Hi, Ed.
Hey, what's up?
Just want to make sure you're good with being on the panel tonight.
Oh, okay. I didn't know I was on the panel. Sure, why not?
Yeah, you had signed up. I know this is the problem when I signed. It was like a 6 month process. So if you signed up for the time warp, it took
That's
6 months.
good. Yeah, it's all good.
All right, good. I know you don't like to talk very much, so. Great. Hi, Amy. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see all of you.
How's our weather in North Carolina? My North Carolinians.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very fallish in a good
And
way.
how is the weather on your side of the neighborhood?
It's lovely actually. It's been really nice since Ian blew through. So everybody's like, wait a second, what
Have you
just happened?
recovered?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slowly we have. Yeah. Our city and county has had a lot of downed branches and a lot of debris, but other than that, not a lot of other damage. We were very lucky. Well, great. Excellent. Shannon, nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us tonight. A few other people popping on. Great. Mary, yeah, we can probably have people introduce, themselves if they're feeling it. Um, we had, like I said, we had 25 people registered, so we'll see how it goes. Um, we've been getting about half of the people who registered, so it's always fun. Mark is going to win the prize for joining us from the farthest distance tonight, though.
And also from the future, Sherry.
Yeah, exactly. From the
I'm
future.
beaming to you from the future. It's Friday morning, 10 o'clock here. I'm going to tell you it's going to rain tomorrow.
Good to know.
This is your weather forecast.
Some of
You
us,
can
it's
just ask me
raining
for a
right
lottery
now.
numbers.
All righty. Well, if people pop on, that's great. But we'll go ahead and get started with our panel. I'll call your name and you can just do a quick introduction of yourself. We'd like to know your name, the number of years involved in experiential education, the positions you've held in AEE, and where you are now geographically. So I'm going to start with Sylvia.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Dresser. I first attended an AEE event in 1993, which was the first Heartland Conference. I remained active in AEE for quite a long time after that, shifting to slightly different role when I became the executive director of the Association for Challenge Course Technology, sort of a allied organization. I held that position until 2010. At AEE, I was on the conference committee for the 1995 conference. I was chair of the Heartland region for 5 or 6 years. I served on the board, and probably something else that I've forgotten. For, for quite a long time, I was heavily involved, and have wonderful memories of that, of course. And now I live in the suburbs of Chicago, where we've lived for quite a long time, although we're not from here, but feel like we are by now. And I've been retired for 7 years and am enjoying it tremendously. It is a big change.
Awesome. That's great to hear that retirement is good. Terry, you want to go next?
Okay. Let's see. My name is Terry Williams. Number of years involved. Well, it said experiential education. I was like, wait a minute, I've been doing this before I knew that term even existed, but I'll start with when I started with AEE, which is actually 1994. So similar to the time Sylvia was involved. My first regional conference was in San Francisco in 1995. Then I did an international in Tahoe, and then took a break. Believe it or not, I was working on my doctorate and was too busy to be involved with AEE, even though experiential education was one of my areas I was focusing on. So I jumped back in 2003. Mari Lung hooked me in. Since 2004, I've either been a conference convener, regional chair, or both, and always involved in a regional conference. On the international level, I'm involved with TAPG. And as far as, I think that's fine. I'm just a huge fan. I love this organization. I'm on the conference committee right now for the West region out here in California. And I just love this community. So it's really wonderful to be here and to see some faces that I haven't seen in a long time. So I really miss you all. I recognize almost everybody here, except some new folks, but.
Thanks, Terry. Mary, will you introduce yourself?
Sure, Terry, I just texted you that I'm heading to Santa Cruz to mountain bike on Sunday. So I popped my cell in the chat if you want to try to connect.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Mary Breinig or Brunig. I've been involved in AEE about the same time as Sylvia and Terry. I think Sylvia actually sort of is the person that I credit my deep involvement with AEE to, because she kind of, in many ways, prompted me to join various things that would further develop my skill set as a young experiential educator, and also like help sort of play a role in AEE's development and evolving sort of organizational structure. I have played a lot of different roles. I've been chair of a regional council. I've convened international conferences. I've been on the board twice. I've been president once. I've been executive director. I've been the editor of the Journal of Experiential Education for 5 years. I serve on the editorial board now, and I delight in helping support the organization in kind of an on-call ad hoc way whenever that's needed, and also just being an enthusiastic participant now at conferences. I, like Terry had said before people came in, most recently, a group of my students here at California State University, Sacramento, which is where I teach now, presented at the West Region Conference in downtown San Francisco a couple of years ago, and they've been actively involved in presenting at virtual conferences as well. So yeah, I'm at Sacramento, zooming in from the ancestral lands of the Miwok, Nisene, and Patwin, Wintu, and Maidu peoples.
Thank you, Mary. Mark, you're up.
Hey, thanks, Sherry. I do want to acknowledge, and I'm picking up on the most recent introduction, that I'm coming to you from the Kulin Nation, the Wurundjeri people And I want to acknowledge those folks, particularly respect their elders past, present and emerging. That's Melbourne, Australia in English terms, and it is Friday morning here. I'm not sure if I'm beating anybody, but my very first experience with AEE was in 1990. That was my very first conference with AEE. I don't know what number it was, but it was certainly in 1990 because it was connected to my internship with Project Adventure, which was my big trip to the United States to learn the tools of Project Adventure. And that's how I got involved. So stories that I have very fondly kept with AEE relate directly to that very first experience. And then I took 25 more years before I came back again. So my next conference was in 2015, and then in 2018 was my last one. And in fact, I still have my little doodads for it. So that was the 2018 conference in Orlando. This is the ones for 2015. I work as an experiential educator. That's a term that's very familiar to us, but not so familiar here in Australia, where we use the term outdoor education or adventure education. And I have served on nothing related to AEE. However, I'm very high profile and very connected here in this country. I've served on the board of Outdoors Victoria. I've just come from our national conference, almost like the equivalent of AEE, just last week in the Blue Mountains outside of Sydney. Where we gathered as a national body for outdoor education and was exhibiting, sponsoring, presenting, emceeing, all of those different hats was just last week.
Thanks, Mark. That's awesome. I hope it was a great conference.
It very much was.
Excellent. Ed, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ed Maggart, and I'm amazed at the accuracy of everyone's memories. I'm not quite sure exactly what year I got started in AEE or which conference was first or anything. They all kind of blur, but sometime in the 90s. And have been pretty involved since then. I served as Southeastern Regional Chair at one point, and pretty soon after that, was on the board and served as treasurer. And then they were getting really hard up a couple of years ago, so I'm back on there now as what's it called? Member at large, which means I just wander around the room if we actually get together. And again in November, it's kind of interesting to be on the board now because of COVID. We've never actually been in the same place. And there's people I feel like I know really well after a couple of years, but I've never actually been in the same room with them. So I'm pretty excited about the conference. And I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I've lived here most of the time since the early 80s. I was going to St. Louis for 6 years, a little while back, running an experiential pre-K through 8 school there. Yeah, so that's me.
Thanks, Ed. Mo?
Awesome. Mo Kappas. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm coming from Madison, Wisconsin, and the lands of the Ho-Chunk. My first conference was in '95 at Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, in the Geneva Resort, which used to be the Playboy Club back in the day. So, and that is like a very vivid memory for me is 1995, not the Playboy Club part, but just that conference. And I have been involved on and off, never officially the Heartland Regional Chair, but have been involved with that council probably since 2011 and trying to make sure that we have a conference here every year, which hasn't happened as much as I would like, but we've been trying. And then have been on the convening committee for international conferences and on the social justice task force right now. And I would like to say that I am your social coordinator at the conference. And if you want to go dancing, all you have to do is find me and I will take you. I'm glad you're in, Ed. Let's go. The cool thing about it this time is the dancing's coming to us. So it'll be pretty cool.
Yes. Bringing lots of dancing to you, Mo. It'll be great. And Arthur, thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to have you here. We're doing the panelists are doing short introductions, just your name and the number of years involved in experiential education and your positions you've had in AEE. Thanks for being here.
Arthur Conquest. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Arthur Conquest. I come to you from Boston, Mass. I'm not sure. I went to attended my first AEE conference in either 72 or 73. Whenever the first conference was held in Estes Park. And that's when I participated. What else is there? I've done a whole slew of things in terms of, I helped put together one of the conferences that I think it was in Vermont. If it wasn't Vermont, it was New Hampshire. And also was very heavily involved with the NALA group, Native, African, Asian, and Latino American. We just had our, I don't know, 25th maybe anniversary about 2 years ago at I'm drawing a blank, but in someplace in the South with Tollett, with Sanford Tollett.
Yeah, we were in Little Rock.
Yeah.
Well, we had our 25th anniversary in Little Rock.
Yeah.
At the Pfeiffer camp. So, you know, I've been around the block a little bit.
That's great. Thank you so much. Glad to have you here. Well, wonderful. I think I hit all of our panelists, so thank you all for being here. Who am I missing, Mo?
I think Joanna.
Joanna's not going to be a panelist tonight.
My bad. Sorry.
I'll speak though. You tempted me.
I just saw the AE, so I was like, oh, Joanna's in. Okay, my bad.
That's okay. Joanna will come back around to you, I promise. But we're gonna keep with our panelists so we can keep on time and start with the first question. What was the reason you were drawn to AEE? And you can, if you want to answer that, you can pop in, and if we need to raise hands, we can do that too. But what was the reason you were drawn to AEE?
I'll go. In the early 80s, I thought I was going to be a research chemist and really needed more contact with people. So ended up being a high school chemistry teacher. And the high school I was at also had an outdoor program, which I eventually ended up running. And I kept thinking, why aren't my academic classes more like the outdoor program where we collaborate and have adventures and we're creative and we make memories? So I kind of discovered experiential education through that and got involved in AEE and ended up going to Prescott College, which many of you know, and getting a graduate degree in experiential ed there. So I kind of started by trying to marry outdoor experiential ed with things in the classroom. And so I've been kind of had a foot in both of those worlds ever since then.
Sorry, Terry. I got started leading wilderness trips in northern Wisconsin and I Can't Manitowish YMCA, and I fell in love with that method of learning and growing. And so once I got off trail, I was like, how do I do this for the rest of my life? And then I just like followed, every seasonal job I could. And at the Outdoor Wisconsin Leadership School, which is in Lake Geneva. That's where the international conference was when I was working there. And they introduced me to AEE, and I've just been involved ever since. So that's how I got where I am. It's changed my life being on trail. It was amazing.
I think that most people would say that it's the people aspect of AEE that draws most of us in and keeps us there and keeps us coming back. The relationships that I formed over the years, the friendships, the wonderful people I knew were something that I feel very grateful to have had in my life, and went out of my way to cultivate as much as I could.
I think intuitively, I just sort of knew that there was some alternative way to teaching and learning than what we were doing in schools. And so I feel like I came to experiential education very experientially, and then found AEE being a graduate student of Jasper Hunt's at Mankato, going on a climbing trip in Boulder, Colorado, and driving through town and just being like, I have to see the place. And, of course, it was just an office like any office. But to me, it was like hallowed ground of like the beginning of like being offered new possibilities on how we conceive of pedagogy. And then really being in awe of the ways in which we could like address the various learning styles of the people that we are trying to teach and learn from.
I mentioned earlier that my first experience with AEE was as an intern for Project Adventure. I was living in Australia. I moved to Boston for 6 months to intern. And part of my 6-month experience was to go to St. Paul, Minneapolis for that AEE conference, whatever number that was. And I have distinct memories of just standing there with what must have been hundreds of other people thinking, these are my people. They get it. They understood. I didn't have to describe to them what experiential learning was. They were all wearing fleece. They had Tivas on, all that other stuff. Like, this was my people. And I remember feeling very, very comfortable in that space. The fact that they were a long, long, long way away was an issue, but that I had that opportunity at that point was what drew me to this association. Sorry, Terry, I jumped in just as we were about to start together. So I'm going to now flick
what?
to you.
Everybody has said it so beautifully. It's really the people. I did want to say, though, I remember the moment. I don't remember the year. I saw a brochure. I believe it was for the very first AEE conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I remember going, oh my God, I want to go. And oh, I don't have the money to show up to this incredible event. And then about 3 or 4 years later, got exposed when I worked with an organization that did challenge course work. So it's just, it described exactly what I'd been dreaming of. And it took a while for me to get to it, but it's reiterating, it's the people and the shared like community of experiential education. It's so many people that come to our conferences are like, wow, I've been doing this for years. I didn't know there was research behind it. I didn't know there were other people doing this. And it just feels like home when you find your people.
On that note, I'm going to jump in because AEE actually found me before I found AEE. So that was very much my story, Terry. I had done experiential education for 25 years before I heard of any associations for anything. And AEE was the first one to accept a proposal for me to speak at a conference. And so I went to AEE Southeast, and Mark, you were saying you found your people. I totally found my people and found a language for what I had been doing all of that time. I didn't even know there was words for it, really.
I find it quite interesting that many people, as they speak, are sort of putting both AEE and the process of experiential education in the same pot. And as to why you were drawn to it and what caught your attention.
Arthur, did you want to respond to that question about the reason you were
Well,
drawn to AE?
Yeah, Mark, was that your conference in Minnesota? Was that when Wilma Mankiller spoke?
You're testing my memory, and I can't recall.
Okay, all right, okay.
I remember how I felt. This should not come as any surprise to any of the work that we do, but I remember how I was made to feel. Don't remember all the content.
But that was one of the most exciting conferences that I had ever attended. But going back to 72, for me, I was doing some pretty crazy things. Black and Latino children in outdoor ed, and with a year-round program was unheard of. You know, Black children, Latino children in outdoor ed up until that point was associated with, well, they can't do it. They're in a foreign environment. And I made my way to Park East High School in New York City, which is right in the center of the hood, East Harlem, my backyard when I was growing up. And I had this vision that we could use the city streets, we could use the East River, we could use rock climbing in Central Park, we could rappel off of buildings, and AEE, or that's not necessarily, but people that I knew from Hurricane Island Outward Bound School were the ones who were associated with AEE, came to me and said, you've got to come to the conference in Estes Park, Colorado, and share with them what you're doing with these youngsters from East Harlem. And that was my ticket, my passport to Estes Park. And on top of that, I went through Outward Bound as a 16-year-old, and my instructor, Joe Knoll, had something to do with the organization of the Estes Park conference. So there was a double whammy with me in terms of how I got there. Remember the Earth shoes? Remember Earth shoes? They were low in the bottom and high on the top. Well, I remember going out to Estes Park and meeting this guy with those shoes, and I'm saying, what kind of wacky stuff? I remember that. What kind of wacky? What kind of fad is this? You know, that was another hilarious thing that I encountered when I went to Estes Park. Earth shoes.
I feel like we could probably do like the experiential education like facilitator through shoes. Like there were Tevas and there were Chacos and there were Birkenstocks earlier. Like we could do a whole process on shoes. That would be kind of fun. Thank you all for sharing. It's great. It's lovely to hear how people are connected to AE and what brought them in. We're going to move on to our second question. What were the major accomplishments that you had personally within your experiential education journey, or that AE had during your time when you were active in AE, when you were volunteering, when you were really a part of the organization? And what were some of the lessons learned? Again, I'm going to let somebody jump in and you guys can pass it to each other. I know you're very good at that. Glenn, I see your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Thank you. To answer the question.
Yeah, will you introduce yourself too, please?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I date back to 74. And I had a professor by the name of God, now all of a sudden I can't remember his name, Brodsky. And he was friends with Carl Ronke. And he had a course at the University of Massachusetts called Fun in the Woods. And it was my first exposure to experiential education, challenge courses, and whatever. And then my field has been working with court adjudicated teenagers, inner city kids who were on their last toe because our agency had a policy that if they couldn't make it with us, they wound up incarcerated. So we were the last stop for a lot of teenagers. And what we did was we were in New England, we were in Massachusetts, and we would take them to Maine, and we would take them to upstate New York, and we would use outdoors as part of the therapeutic change agent. Most recently, from 2001 to 2012, I was involved in building a challenge course for the Sparta school system in North Carolina. And it was just a phenomenal experience of creating an environment where these kids could succeed. So I'll stop there. There's lots more to the story, but that's enough to make an introduction. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Anybody else want to jump in on the question about accomplishments of AE during your time there? I know, Mary.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
For me, while my first experience was in 1990, then there was this 25-year gap. That 2015 decision to travel to Portland, Oregon, and not only attend but present at that conference was part of a bit of a business plan that I owned the market in Australia, so to speak, as small as it was, and I really had an ambition to be able to expand my boundaries and present internationally. So AEE was the platform on which I had those first opportunities to present internationally. So that occurred in Portland. So that was an accomplishment from a personal perspective. But I think I also learned more about the maturity, certainly the depth of experience and quality of program within the AEE community that I was then able to take with me, not only back home, but given all of my work that I do, particularly throughout Asia and Southeast Asia and parts of Europe, to be able to then share some of that in other parts that, if I think of places like China that I've done a lot of work in, it is a very, very young industry, even though they have a very long culture and history. They were very interested in learning more about experiential learning. So I was taking lessons I was learning internationally, plus what I already knew, to be able to share this in other parts of the world. So I think in some respects, there are many people outside of America who often view the United States as the beacon. And in many ways that is true, but it was also great to be able to understand that you didn't have it all, and that I could also learn from other parts of the world and add my own understanding from our own cultures here as well. So they were just little snippets of lessons that I got, Sherry.
I'll follow up, Mark, on what you're saying, because when I think about the last 30-ish years I've been involved, I think the thing that pops to mind for me is my involvement in the board the last couple of years, where I came on and we had a conference planned and COVID hit, and all of a sudden we had to cancel the in-person conference and try to figure out what to do. And like many nonprofits, it was sort of a crisis time. And I'm blowing Sherry's horn here a little bit, but I think it's amazing in the last couple of years how we've been able to shift to a more online presence, which has allowed folks that either couldn't afford to come to a conference or, live 3 continents away to suddenly start connecting with each other. And, there were people from the Philippines at the Southeast Regional Conference last year. And so I think as we move ahead, that's pretty exciting for us to start to make those connections. And as we try to grow into a more inclusive and equitable organization in many ways, I think having people from around the globe involved is crucial, because like Mark says, we don't own experiential education. It's not just us. There are exciting things going on in Hong Kong and China and India and everywhere. And so I'm hopeful that we can become a more global organization and continue to play up that involvement. I think most of you know that the conference this year, for the first time, is a hybrid. So many of us are excited about, seeing each other again and hanging out with folks, but there's also an opportunity for people who can't take 4 days off from work, can't afford it, live 5,000 miles away, whatever, to be involved. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I'm excited about that.
Can I just say something? I want to put a B in or a pin in the side of the wall for you. I'm going to say, I think it might have been 3 months ago, that a whole group of Black alpine mountaineers climbed Mount Everest. And I think it would really be exciting if you got, even if it was by Zoom, if you got someone from that group or a number of them from that group to speak at the AEE conference. I don't know whether you could do it this year, but put that as a possibility and begin to put someone in charge of working to have that happen. And I think it's when you consider, does anybody know Jed Williamson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jed had been keeping me connected to that for about 6 months, 6 or 8 months. He had been following it and sending me updates, and to see where they, finally achieved their goal was an exciting experience. And you can use that to motivate inner city children, to let them know that the mountains belong, and whether it's Everest, whether it's, Concord, New Hampshire, belongs to everybody, and they can be a part of it as well. But it can start with these whatever 16 people who believed in themselves and made that ascent.
Thank you, Arthur.
I think one of the things that happened when I started getting involved in AEE was the creation of regions, and obviously the focus was on North America to start with. I don't know where it is now, but to start to move away from having only one large conference in one place that maybe not everybody could go to, but to have things a little bit closer in areas that hopefully people could drive to at least some of the time, to sort of filter it, the whole AE experience down to a more regional level. And like I say, I have absolutely no idea what's happening on that now, but for quite a number of years, that was a very, very vibrant program. And we used to have an annual meeting where the chairs of all the regions came together to work together to kind of coordinate and make things happen in similar ways that were successful and share those kinds of ideas with each other. That was something that I would be hopeful would continue.
Sherry, if I may, interesting question. I'm talking about, the achievements of AE, and I can, my first conference I went to was the one in Estes Park, and so, when I first started looking at this field, it really wasn't even a field, and now as we grown 50 years later, look at the large influence that we have throughout some people call it experiential learning, some people call it active learning, some people call it, place-based learning, but it's all experiential learning. And I think what's happened is that our organization has helped create that breadth and depth of knowledge so that for all of us and everybody who, I know I stand on shoulders of giants, but everybody who continues in this field, I think that what this organization has done is created a credible organization, a credible field that we can keep expanding and growing. But really, I can remember my first conference in Estes Park, and I'm like, is this even a profession? I mean, how do we, experiential learning? And now it's like, yeah, it's profession and more, no matter what arena we play in the field. So I when I'm looking at the accomplishment, I'm looking at, the really large influence we've had. And I think it's bigger than we think about it, because not everybody uses the term experiential learning for experiential learning, but they're all using what's coming out of what we've done and what we've accomplished. So I think that's really the biggest accomplishment. I think that's one of the bigger accomplishments we've made, is just making it legit because of the breadth and depth and knowledge that we now have coming out of all the people that are, that are involved here. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents into that process.
Thank you, Jay.
If I can build on that too, I think one of the other things that happened in the 2000s, I don't remember exactly when, there were a couple of meetings at Project Adventure where that AEE was involved in as well, that was the nucleus that created the whole SEER idea. I don't even remember what it stands for, but the whole research and the emphasis on research and presenting it at the conference and some kind of organized fashion of collecting what was going on and focusing on what areas needed to be explored. And I suspect that that continues to this day to create a wonderful focus on research that supports the work that so many people do.
Actually, Sylvia, I was getting ready to just share that. I just wanted to share real quick. When I started my doctorate program, the journal was just it was like an awesome paper publication. It wasn't in any universities. There was a big gap in research. And the explanation was a lot of people finished their graduate school and they took a break. But I just remember 2 major researchers that kept doing research through there. And I thought it was 2 women. One of them, their name was Nina Roberts. And I just want to honor Nina, missing her, good friend of mine, and super consistent in research and before ahead of her time in AEE. And then Christian Eteen, who I thought was a woman. And so it was really, really neat to meet Christian. But I just want to acknowledge AEE and your accomplishment for what you've done with the journal and acknowledging research. I think that's been really, really essential. First of all, for people that have been studying in the field, but for all of us that want to do program evaluation and put the evidence behind what we know for many, many years works. So I think it's a huge accomplishment. So thank you for everybody that's been part of that.
Is Nina Roberts still with us?
No, we lost her at the end of March, and I'm going to start to cry. So
I remember she was at in Minnesota with Wilma Mankiller. She was part of that group. She started NALA with us.
Yes. Joanna, you've had your hand up. Did you want to jump in?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I could fill in on a lot of stuff. I didn't give my background. Just to say, my first conference was 1986 in Moodus, Connecticut, and I too found a home there because it wasn't. I didn't do outdoor adventure. I didn't do adventure education. I was a public school teacher who not only I didn't do all those activities. I taught over the telephone. I just want to say that. But when I found AE, it was the philosophy by which I've always lived. Now, I just want to add in, since was a public school teacher, and I did know Nina very well, Christian, I joined, when I came in, it was the days of Dick Kraft and Jim Kilsmeyer, the Proudmans who did work in the cities. So But I see experiential education as a very, very broad thing. And what I love about AEE and what Outward Bound was, you started the boundaries, break the mold schools. There was a competition, and ELOB started, Expeditionary Learning Outward Bound Schools. And I live now in California. I moved here 6 years ago, and there are expeditionary schools right in my neighborhood. And they don't use OB at the end, but they call it, we're an expeditionary school. I don't know even know if they hold the background. So that's one area, which I think AE, they became their own organization, still is going strong. They entered, Outward Bound had entered the competition for breaking the mold. What can we do to help education? Greg Farrell was the vice president of Outward Bound and headed that. And then the other thing that I don't see that much of is a service learning. That was a huge part under Jim Kilsmeyer in Minnesota. And also, as far as positions, I never held position, I guess because I was always on the fringes of AE, being public school. I don't do outdoor, I don't venture. But the service learning, I think, was a huge part of AE. And I don't know what happened to schools and colleges. I did head it from 94 to 96, and Lake Geneva, that was, I remember I happened to get the Stratton Award then. And then when you say Minneapolis, I think that was 1990. I attended almost 20 in a row, starting with 86. I went to every single conference, and I paid my own way because this is not what I was doing in my own school system. I taught math and science. So everything, all the names you're bringing up, Jed Williamson, knew him. Yeah, so those things that you affected schools by ELOB and then also promoted service learning, which is one of the best ways to develop people. Thank you.
I'd like to insert something here. I'm sitting in Belk Library at App State University. That's why you're seeing people walk back and forth behind me. I'm working on a doctorate, and the three focuses for me are emotional intelligence, self-efficacy, and critical thinking. And I've just completed the last of the required courses in the electives and whatever. So now I'm focused on the dissertation. And David Kolb, experiential learning, is critical in what I'm studying, because you can't teach emotional intelligence or self-efficacy or critical thinking from a book. You can't teach it in a class. You have to be able to teach it experientially. So this brings up this whole issue around dealing with emotions and emotional intelligence and creating an environment that becomes a learning opportunity for everyone involved. And so this is like being in I don't know, in a candy store or a toy store or whatever. I'm just having a wonderful time because everything I'm doing and everything that keeps coming to me is like grist for the mill. So I'm having a wonderful time.
Thank you so much.
This is a little bit of an aside, but since you mentioned David Kolb, I don't know if everyone knows, but there's a second edition of experiential learning now. And there is a whole chapter of research that backs up what he said when he wrote the thing 42 years ago or whatever it is. So if you haven't had a chance to dive into that, it's exactly what we've been talking about, that there's a massive amount of research and part of it's in brain development and thinking and everything else that really is backing up all the stuff we're talking about. So
the phrase neuroplasticity is instrumental in the whole process, because you can change the brain, you can improve the brain through experiential exercises and activities and games and play and whatever. So this is like, oh man, what a wish come true.
I have to toss in that I have a PhD in experiential education. I was just simply compelled to do it, and exactly everything you're saying is what I learned. My own work, well, the work that I do right now is so much the ultimate in experiential education. I teach meditation in the prison system, and when you talk about the things that you cannot teach by words or anything, you could only lead people into an experience. Well, then talk about meditation. That's exactly everything you're saying is I have to agree. It's just a tremendous, very broad, and it has to do with the brain, with the emotions, and with something that happens inside what I call the aha moment. And I want to say, it sounds strange, but even with my teaching for years over the telephone, I could bring about that aha moment. And that's when I knew, something happened within the brain and within that person that transformed them. And that's the work that I'm doing. And to me, I am at the ultimate use of my training by what I'm doing, working with people right now.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm going to move us forward again. So many great comments and good talk. And we're just going to wind this one up with your favorite AE story. I know everybody has a lot of them. It's been great to hear so many over the course of planning for this upcoming conference. It being our 50th, I've done a lot of research and gotten to talk to a lot of folks, which has been amazing. But if you could hone it in, our panelists, if you could hone in kind of your favorite AE 2-minute moment, it would be great.
One of my most recent moments was having my students present at the conference in San Francisco, have them come back and tell me about Terry Williams and Joanna Allen. And I didn't even know Joanna Allen had moved to the Mid-Atlantic region, or from the Mid-Atlantic region. Like, I learned about how to do math experientially from Joanna, which triggered my curiosity and my entry into the field of experiential education in many ways at a Mid-Atlantic conference in the early 90s. And to have my students come back and be so completely fired up. And I was like, what's Joanna Allen doing in California? And then I know that Terry Williams shared like some stories with my queer students, profound impact on them. To see themselves in you and to see themselves like the potential for their success. They actually thought that I pretended to be sick because they actually were testing whether my staying back was going to make for, they knew me well enough to understand that they should like puzzle that out. They're like, did you stay at home so that we would optimize our learning and you wouldn't get in the way of it? Because that was incredible. And I was like, no, I was straight up legitimately sick. And they were like, okay, because that actually, so just having that experience was incredible for me. One thing I just want to give a little plug for all of us here, because one thing I want us to really try to be mindful of as we come back together again in person and as we continue to advance our fields is to acknowledge like the founding fathers and the forebears and those people that gave us the language that we can now use to have conversations, and to continue to amplify and elevate voices like BIPOC voices, Black, Indigenous, people of color. I want us to really try to like decanonize our thinking and decolonize our thinking and start to cite people beyond Kolb and start to like, because there have been lots of people that have been writing about these topics, and we tend to just kind of lean on the people that are part of our kind of loose informal canon. So I just want to like encourage us to continue to draw from a diversity of resources. And I have not seen in a very long time anybody as enthusiastic about their PhD dissertation as you and Gordon, and that is like incredibly inspiring.
Mary's comment sort of leads into the memory. I was, it's sort of hard to pick. But a few years ago, and again, my memory's really bad. I can't remember where it was. At one of the international conferences, there was a wonderful experiential educator from India named Maddie Sudan who spoke. And I was really impressed with the work he was doing with kids in India and with what he had to say. And I had literally, I think the year before, taken over this experiential school in St. Louis. And afterwards I talked to him, I said, I would love to get you to come to my school and work with the teachers and meet the kids and see what, we could do together. And he said, well, I was going to go to California for a week, but I'll just go back with you. So he literally at the end of the conference just got in the car and spent a week working with the teachers, meeting the kids. And then we ended up having a partnership for the next 2 or 3 years, just because of that spontaneous thing. I mean, who would do that? That just was amazing to me and opened up, it kind of like Mary's talking about, a new frame of reference for me outside of Project Adventure and Coleman, the things that are all great, but that was kind of my little box in experiential education.
Thanks, Ed. It's a great story.
Sherry, I'll share 3 quick ones that hark right back to my very first experience with AEE. In no particular order, I remember coming back from the conference dinner and someone, as we had entered back into the hotel, passing by the swimming pool, had dared someone else, I dare you to jump in the pool, fully clothed. And they did, and within moments, there were dozens of us fully clothed in the swimming pool. I swear they're probably still drying out the elevator for having to go then back to our room. That was crazy. I also recall very fondly as one of my mentors, Carl Ronke he was given the honor to give the Kurt Hahn Award address, I believe, that year. So to actually hear that, and that was where I picked up the term play note, because he was never going to ever present a keynote, but it was always going to be embracing play. And then finally, there was an activity day that was connected to the conference. And one of my favorite things that I did was a canoe trip with folks who were visually impaired. There was a gentleman who was completely blind who was in my canoe, and that was revolutionary for me. Someone who could not see what was going on, and to work with them for my first time down a river that I'd never been down either. AEE gave me that opportunity.
Amazing, Mark. Thank you for sharing. Sylvia or Terry?
Well, speaking of conference memories, we had one of the conferences in 96 or 97, I think it was 97 in Asheville. It's a big old arts and crafts hotel. It was gorgeous. They had
The Grove Park Inn.
The Grove Park Inn, correct. They had no clue who was coming. There were people who made campfires on the golf course. They ran out of beer. And I think that they pulled 27 people down off of the rock walls during the course of the conference. And I'm not sure that they ever recovered from that.
Sylvia, that is one that has come up in many of the conversations. I think, yeah, legendary, definitely legendary. We will be close to the Oak Park Inn at this one. And actually, our keynote speaker, her book is centered in the Grove Park Inn, that her fictional account that she's written. So it's it all kind of connects. But yeah, I've heard so many stories about that conference.
Well, I'll share 2 quick fun favorite memories. They both have to do with TAPG. One being another naughty moment at Little Rock. I'll never forget a pillow fight that covered about 5 floors. I don't know if you remember that clear elevator, and the TAPG, they were doing a pillow fight across the floors, and we got in trouble. And I don't think we were asked to come back after that, but it was really funny. And then another TAPG moment was when we were in Tucson, and we had a pre-con that had a sweat lodge, a luau, walking on fire, and walking on glass. And I'll never forget the moment at the end, Christian was like, "So did you all check with the board? I'm not sure our insurance covered this." It's like, oh, well, actually insurance would cover those type of activities. Now we know that, but it was kind of, I just love that about our community, kind of pushing the edges. Nobody got hurt. It was really, really a wonderful experience. But
Good thing he asked after.
Yeah.
Mo, do you have a story to share?
Yeah, sure. So Lake Geneva was my first one. We had a snowball fight inside because it had snowed. So I thought that was really fun. And then one of the special things for me in conferences has been like the amazing things that happen between the workshops, right? Just stopping with people and having some conversation and then totally having a paradigm like shift. That happened with me with Mary in a hotel or in an elevator. Like that short of a conversation, right? Something happens, you're talking about something and it really just had a shift for me. So you don't even have to go to the workshops, just hang out in the hallways and talk to the folks, because I just learned so much. So those are my memories. Oh, dancing in Minneapolis, dancing in Vegas.
Again, if anybody wants to go dancing, Mo is your person.
I have one. Somebody mentioned Santa Fe. That was 1989, and AE joined with another experiential organization. And I remember, I don't like the cold, and we camped on a ball field. It was so dusty. I wore every bit of my clothes. I came with a principal from my school system, and when we woke up, there was so much dust all over their tents. So that's what I can't remember. I do not like the cold. I love camping, but I tend to be a warm weather person. And so I keep thinking of, I never had been so cold. Also, when I was in the, I think it was 1997 for the Asheville conference, I camped on the French Broad River. Again, I went with that principal, the same principal, elementary school, and we both did a presentation. But I remember camping, and it was so cold. We went to the laundry room, and that's where we had our breakfast. Right on the dryers. And anyway, those times, camping was always fun. And then finally, somebody mentioned Minnesota. I think that was 1990, and I camped in the middle of the river, Mississippi. They had camping allowed there. And so those camping experiences, because I grew up on a very, very busy city street, I never camped until I left home. And so this is all new to me too.
Awesome. Well, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We're at the top of the hour, so if you need to jump off, I understand. If anybody else has a story to share, I'm sure folks would be happy to stay on and hear it. But again, thank you to our panelists tonight. It's been great to kind of zip through the time and the different decades and see what was going on. And this will be available on YouTube, as are all of our other Circle Up series. Don't forget the conference. We're just about a month away. So excited. We have over 650 people registered. So it's going to be a great one. We're really excited about that and looking forward to seeing everybody. And if you can't join us in person, don't forget you can join virtually too. We got a lot of great stuff happening that way. So thank you all very much.
You should send us information.
I will. I will send you some, Arthur. Definitely.
Good to see everyone.
thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Good to see y'all.
Have a good night.
Hugs to everyone.
Yes.
Same.
All the best, folks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Anna. Good night, everyone.